प्रणतोऽस्मि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Okay, I just share my screen. I think we'll have 3.38 if I'm not wrong. Okay, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so let's recite this verse. This is Bhagavad Gita 3.38. You can repeat after me. Dhumena vriyate vahanir
Dhumena priyatena vahine
yatha darsho malena cha
yatha darsho malena cha
yathol vrato garbhas
yatholbena vrato garbhas
tatha tene damavritam
तथा तेनेदम avratam
धूमेना व्रियते वह्निर्
धूमेना प्रियते वह्निर्
यथा दर्शो मलेन च
यथा दर्शो मलेन च
यथोल्बेनावृतो गर्भस्
यतोल्बेनावृतो गर्भस्
तथा तेनेदमावृतम्
तथा तेनेदमावृतम्
धूमेना व्रियते वह्निर्
धूमेना प्रियते वह्निर्
यथा दर्शो मलेन च
यथा दर्शो मलेन च
यथोल्बेनावृतो गर्भस्
यतोल्बेनावृतो गर्भस्
तथा तेनेदमावृतम्।
तथा तेनेदमावृतम्।
Anyone else would like to recite?
धूमेनाव्रियते वह्निर्
धूमेनाव्रियते वह्निर्
यथा दर्शो मलेन च
यथा दर्शो मलेन च
यतोल्बेनावृतो गर्भस्
यथोल्बेनावृतो गर्भस्
तथा तेनेदमावृतम्।
तथा तेनेदमावृतम्। धूमेनाव्रियते
धूमेनाव्रियते
वह्निर्
वह्निर्
यथा दर्शो मलेन
यथा दर्शो
च
मलेन च
यथोल्बेनावृतो गर्भस्
यतोल्बेनावृतो गर्भस्
तथा तेनेदमावृतम्। तथा
तथा
तेनेदमावृतम्।
तेनेदमावृतम्।
धूमेनाव्रियते वह्निर्बलवदः
धूमेनाव्रियते
धूमेनाव्रियते
वह्निर्
वह्निर्
दर्शे मलेन च
यथा
यथा
दर्शो मलेन
दर्शो
च
मलेन च
यथोहेनास्तुतो गर्भस्तथा
यथोल्बेनावृतो
यतोल्बेनावृतो
गर्भस्
गर्भस्
तेनेदमवृतम्।
तथा
तथा
तेनेदमावृतम्।
तेनेदमावृतम्।
Anyone else? Okay, very nice, Radhika. You recited very well. It's
I
a
know,
tongue
she was
twister.
perfect.
You always
This,
does a good job.
yeah, I was like surprised. This verse
I
is so
was
difficult.
too. She
It's a
sounded
tongue
like an
twister,
adult.
but she recited effortlessly and
I know.
precisely. Very nice. Okay, so yeah, you have to teach me now how to recite verses. Okay, Radhika. Okay, so let's recite the synonyms now. Dhumena,
Dhumena.
Dhumena.
by smoke.
By
By
smoke.
smoke.
Avriyate,
Avriyate.
is covered.
Is covered.
Covered.
Vahani,
Vahani.
fire.
Fire.
Yatha,
Yata.
just as.
Just as.
Adirsha,
Adarsha.
mirror.
Mirror.
Malena,
Malena.
by dust.
By dust.
Right.
Cha,
Cha.
also.
Also.
Yatha,
Yata.
just as.
Just as.
Ulbena,
Ulvena.
by the womb.
By the womb.
Avritaha,
Avrataha.
is covered.
Is covered.
Garbha,
Garbha.
embryo.
Embryo.
Tatha,
Tatha.
so.
So.
Tena,
Tena.
by that lust.
By that lust.
Idam,
Idam.
this.
This.
Avritam,
Avratam.
is covered.
Is covered.
Covered.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. Purport. There are 3 degrees of covering of the living entity by which his pure consciousness is obscured. This covering is but lust, under different manifestations like smoke in the fire, dust on the mirror, and the womb about the embryo. When lust is compared to smoke, it is understood that the fire of the living spark can be a little perceived. In other words, when the living entity exhibits his Krishna consciousness slightly, he may be likened to the fire covered by smoke. Although fire is necessary where there is smoke, there is no overt manifestation of fire in the early stage. This stage is like the beginning of Krishna consciousness. The dust on the mirror refers to a cleansing process of the mirror of the mind by so many spiritual methods. The best process is to chant the holy names of the Lord. The embryo covered by the womb is an analogy illustrating a helpless position, for the child in the womb is so helpless that he cannot even move. This stage of living condition can be compared to that of the trees. The trees are also living entities, but they have been put in such a condition of life by such a great exhibition of lust that they are almost void of all consciousness. The covered mirror is compared to the birds and beasts, and the smoke-covered fire is compared to the human being. In the form of a human being, the living entity may receive a little Krishna consciousness. And if he makes further development, the fire of spiritual life can be kindled in the human form of life. By careful handling of the smoke in the fire, fire can be made to blaze. Therefore, the human form of life is a chance for the living entity to escape the entanglement of material existence. In the human form of life, one can conquer the enemy, lust, by cultivation of Krishna consciousness under able guidance. नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनीति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे. I read the translation one more time. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. Hare Krishna. So, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives very emphatic examples to put across certain points that are important for us to understand. And unless he gives those examples, it will be very difficult for us to understand those concepts. So the concepts that are given in Bhagavad Gita, they are very expertly conveyed by Krishna through the means of these analogies. So here Krishna is giving the analogy of fire covered by smoke, the mirror covered by the dust, and the embryo covered by the womb. Now, just to understand what's happening here, Krishna is actually answering a question asked by Arjuna. So what impaired, like what made Arjuna to ask that question is, so if you remember, Krishna had said in 3.30, Mai sarvani karmani sanyas adhyatma chetasa nirashir nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigata jwaraha. He says, actually, Arjuna, surrendering all your work unto me and with full knowledge of me and without any desires for profit or any claims of false proprietorship, you should fight. That's how Krishna had told Arjuna in 3.30. And then very clearly, Krishna says that those people who accept my teachings, my injunctions with faith, they will become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. But those who do not accept my injunctions, who do not follow my teachings, they are, he says very clearly, they should be considered as bereft of all knowledge. And then ultimately, all their endeavors will be ruined. Nothing will lead them to perfection. So ultimately, Krishna is saying that everything should be offered to me, all your work, all your activities. And this Krishna will say very clearly in the 9th chapter also. We had discussed it last time. So then Krishna starts talking about the nature that we had acquired from the material modes of nature, our inner nature that is there. Krishna says that nature is, it is like our identity. You cannot just give it up like that. It's not, it's not that we wish it away. Everybody has acquired a certain kind of nature. We have our own interests. We have our own, way of working, way of thinking, way of acting, and that we have acquired from the modes of material nature. It's like a different uh, different quantities in which the three modes are mixed together, and then that's how we have come up with this nature. And of course, we know that we have this. There are four primarily kind of people. We have the guna karma vibhagasaha. He says, Krishna says that. So according to the gunas and according to the karmas, there are four kinds of people. So the varnas, as Krishna says that chatur varnam maya shrishtam guna karma vibhagasaha. So they are actually natural division of human nature. That's how Krishna puts it in the Bhagavad Gita. And Krishna says that every man has a different kind of nature. And then he says later in 3.35, he makes it very clear. Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha paradharma swanushthitat. Swadharme nidhanam shreya paradharmo bhayavaha. He says that actually it is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though 40 days. So prescribed duties are basically, they origin from the nature that we have acquired from the three modes of material, from the material nature actually. And one who tries to follow the path of another man, he says, paradharma bhayavaha. It is very dangerous. So it is like Krishna is saying that, according to the to our own nature, our own body, our own interest, we have a set path, and if we follow that set path, it will be like smooth for us. We can slowly and steadily we can go towards transcendence, because that is the ultimate purpose, to come to this material world. But if we try to follow someone else's nature, it will be like a very rocky path. And not just rocky, Krishna says that paradharmat bhayavaha means it is very dangerous in the sense that the chances of crashing is very, very high. So almost certainly you will crash if you try to follow someone else's nature. Actually, this is the same logic. Actually, that will come later. I'll talk about it, like how even Duryodhana talks about it later. So Krishna says this very clearly, that we have to follow our own nature. And that actually Arjuna asks a question according. So Arjuna thinks that, okay, I understand that we have to follow our own nature, but sometimes even while following our own nature, we are sometimes taken off the path. There is something that impels us to act, sinfully. And he asks Krishna, what is it that basically takes us away from our path, forcefully, even though we don't want to do it, but still we are compelled to do it. Athakena prayuktoyam papam chariti purushaha anichham api varshnaya baladiva niyojitaha. Says, what is it that impels one to act sinfully and unwillingly? So what does it mean? That, we have our own desires, and it is not wrong to have desires, but certain times we have some desires which are kind of imposed upon us. So they are not our default desires. So how it happens is sometimes there is just a spell that comes upon us, which makes us to act sinfully. Even though we may not want to do it, but still we do it. And this would have happened to many of us or most of us at certain times. We just helplessly do it, even though we know that this is not right, we should not do it. And there is an inner voice that coming, what are you doing, why are you doing this? But we still do it. So what is it actually that makes us do it? And this is a very important question. And this question from Arjuna will lead Krishna to reveal his supreme position later in the 4th chapter. So this question, although it is asked by Arjuna in just one verse, Athakena prayuktayam papam chariti purushah anicham abhivarshneya baladiva niyojitah. Just one verse Arjuna asks this question, but Krishna answers this in 7 verses. And towards the end of this chapter, right from 3.37 to 3.43, in 7 verses, Krishna answers this question. So actually what happens is Krishna is an expert teacher. So he's an expert guru. So an expert teacher does not just answer the letter of the question, he also answers the intent of the question. And so what Krishna does is he understands the intention of Arjuna behind, for Arjuna asking this question. So Arjuna's intention is that, so what is happening with Arjuna is ultimately, he knows that he has to fight this war, but there is something which is pulling him. I don't want to fight this war. It is very forceful on Arjuna, and he understands that he is acting against his dharma, and therefore he knew that I'm bewildered, and then he had surrendered to Krishna. And then in this helpless situation, he had surrendered to Krishna, and then that was the original intention of Arjuna. So Krishna understands the intention, and Krishna, when he answers, he just doesn't say that, okay, it is just lust, Arjuna, so it's okay. He tells Arjuna how to get free from lust also. And then when he tells that, so here in the 3rd chapter, he just gives like a half course action. The main course action that Krishna gives is that's later in the 4th chapter, 4.7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Those verses, Krishna actually gives the full course action, what is to be done to win over lust. So 3.37 is where Krishna starts answering this question of Arjuna, which Vallabhi Mataji had covered last time. He says, Kama esha krodha esha rajoguna samudbhavaha mahashano mahapapama vidya enam iha vairinam. Iha vairinam. This is the enemy of the entire world. So Krishna says, Kam esha krodha esha. No, it is lust only, excuse me, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath. And then he says, Mahashano Mahapapma. No, it is like Maha means it's a great devourer, and Mahapapma, it is extremely sinful. Vidya enam iha vairinam. He says, here is the enemy. So he says like this, this is the enemy of the entire world. So indirectly, what Krishna is telling to Arjuna is that, it is not that Duryodhana is your enemy. Actually, the enemy is lust. So Krishna is not just asking Arjuna to rage a war against Duryodhana and the Kauravas. He is also asking Arjuna to rage an internal war against the anarthas. So we all have anarthas within us. What is anartha? Artha means things that have that thing that has value. Artha means something that has meaning or value. And anartha means that which has no value or no meaning, but still we give it a lot of value and a lot of meaning. Actually, it has no value and no meaning, but we think that it has a lot of value and a lot of meaning. So those kind of things are called as anarthas. So lust is the ultimate enemy. From lust, all those other things, pride, anger, everything else that comes, attachment, it comes from lust. So lust is the ultimate thing. It is the strongest fort of goddess Durga. Durga is, it is like a fort, and we are trapped inside this fort of material nature, or Maya, as we call it. And the strongest prison house is the prison house of lust. Even if there are cases where there are people who can get free from the prison house of lust, but then there are other complex mixtures that are made from lust, like pride, envy, fear, attachment. All of that has come from lust only. So there they get trapped. So now Krishna is actually talking about how to get free from it. So first he talks a little bit more details about this in 3.38 that we were discussing. So he gives a little more analogy that how lust covers. What it covers will be described later, but how it covers. So as fire is covered by smoke, as mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. So Prabhupada explains, and it's this standard explanation given by most Vaishnava Acharyas, that these three analogies, they refer to the three different species. So the first, that is fire covered by smoke, that actually refers to the human form of life. So actually fire is very useful for us, but what happens is, along with fire, there is smoke. So fire generally in the Vedic context, it is considered very auspicious. It is considered as a tongue of Vishnu. It is very, very auspicious. But the smoke that comes out of fire, that is considered to be inauspicious. But regardless, the smoke is always there wherever there is fire. So even if the fire gets completely covered by smoke, still it gives us heat, and that heat is also very useful. It can be used for different purposes, for cooking, for staying warm, so different purposes. So that is covered by the consciousness of human beings. Human beings, it is we have to understand that lust is like a covering. Dhumena avriyate, avaran is covering. So lust is like a covering, and what it covers is, that will be described later, it covers our knowledge. So Maya, later in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada talks about, he gives a little technical analysis of how Maya works. How does Maya bewilder us? So actually Maya has two potencies. The first one is called avaratmika shakti. Avaranatmika shakti means the potency to cover. So what it covers is, it covers our real knowledge. Our real knowledge is that aham brahmasmi, I am spirit soul. So it covers that. Jivara Swarup Hoy Krishner Nityadas. It covers those our constitutional identity, our constitutional position. That is avaranatmika. It covers it. And then prakshashatmika. Prakshashatmika is the potency that gives us a false identity. And that false identity is that I am man, I am woman, I am American, I am Indian, I like this, I don't like that. So that is prakshashatmika, where we start identifying ourselves with the material nature, material circumstances, material body, material relationships, material consciousness in general. So that's how Maya works. So avaranatmika and prakshashatmika. So here Krishna is talking about the covering potency of Maya. Dhumena vriyate vahanir, just as the fire is covered by smoke. So it is in the human form of life, it is easy or relative, it's not very easy, but it's relatively easy to remove that covering of Maya, of lust. So it is possible by through if we surrender to an expert spiritual master, tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. A spiritual master, a jnani who has gyan about what? Our real identity. The real identity is aham brahmasmi and jivara swarup hoy Krishna nityadas janma karma chame divyam. That spiritual master who understands this, he is an expert spiritual master. So that spiritual master can actually help us to come out of this avaran of smoke that is described here. But it is important for us to surrender to such a, first is to find such a spiritual master and then surrender to him, and then let him do his magic. Then we have in a magic in the sense that we have to act according to his instructions. But sometimes that is also very difficult for us. So in the human form of life, it is relatively easy. The second example that is given is the dust, a mirror covered by dust. So when there is a mirror and there is a very thick layer of dust that is covering the mirror, so it is very difficult for us to see our image in the mirror, our reflection in the mirror. So that is considered to be an animal in the animal species. So the covering is much more stronger. It's very difficult for them to perceive anything. They have to come out of that animal life to be able to see that. So it's going to take some time, for them to come to to a human form of life, and then from there they can rise towards transcendence. Similarly, the next that is given is embryo covered by the womb. So embryo is, it is in a helpless condition. That's how Prabhupada explains it. It is going to take its own sweet time. It's not that, if an embryo is there, we can take it out from the womb within 3 months or 4 months. It's going to complete its tenure within the womb, and then it will come out on its own. So that is compared. So if we try to take it out sooner, then it will result into death. So it's not going to help. So so it is compared to the plant life. So plant life is, the covering is much more stronger. Their consciousness is completely covered. So it will take its own course of time for it to come to an animal life, and from there rise towards the human form of life, and then rise towards transcendence. So in each of the cases that is given here, first is fire covered by smoke. Second is the mirror covered by the dust, and the third is embryo covered by the womb. The covering is progressively stronger. It is much more difficult for the covering to be removed. So that's how it is explained here. And this analogy of fire covered by smoke, it is used elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita. Anyone remembers where it is used? The same analogy of fire covering the smoke. I'm sorry, smoke covering the fire. Anyone remembers it? The analogy of smoke covering the fire, it is used in at another place also, in a different chapter.
Is it in chapter 10? Because that's what comes to my mind. Somewhere in chapter 10, I think.
Do you remember the context, Mataji? I don't.
No, I don't
think. No, I don't think it is in the 10th chapter.
In chapter 10.
Okay, I think someone has raised the hand.
Okay.
Okay, anyone wants to answer it? Okay, anyway, so this is in the 18th chapter, 18.48. Sahajam karma kaunteya sadosham api nachadit ati api natyajit sarvarambha hi doshena dhumen agnirin ivavritaha. He says that, Krishna says to Arjuna that every endeavor is covered by some fault, just as fire is covered by smoke. So here he uses it in a different sense. He is telling Arjuna that, don't think that because you're a fighter, your work is inauspicious, because as a fighter Arjuna has to kill, and to kill is very inauspicious. He is going to create so much inauspiciousness in the entire world by killing so many people. So Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna that every sarvarambhena hi doshena, every endeavor is covered by some fault, just as the fire is covered by smoke. So as I was mentioning, fire is auspicious, but the smoke is inauspicious. So every work, every endeavor is covered by some fault. That's how Krishna puts it in the 18th chapter, 48th verse. But here the context is a little different. Here Krishna is using this in another way. He's saying that it is like a covering on the consciousness of a person. So I just take a quick pause and see if there are any other questions or comments or corrections about what I had said.
What were the two things you said? Avara, Pratyakshena and Avarakshena. What were the two things you said?
Avaranatmika Shakti and Praksheshatmika Shakti. Avaranatmika Shakti is, it covers our real identity, our real knowledge. The soul is Sat Chit Anand. Chit means knowledge. It has knowledge, but it gets covered. So that is Avaranatmika Shakti, that which covers our real knowledge, real identity. And Praksheshatmika means Maya gives us a false identity. It gives us these bodies of man, woman, animal, and then we start identifying ourselves with the body, with our material situations, conditions, relations, material emotions. So
How
that
are
is
they different?
Praksheshatmika.
They both seem same to me.
No,
One we are identifying,
one is, it is covering your true identity. So one is that you know, if I am in this room, if you just put a like a blind fold on my eyes, and then I don't know where I am then, so it is like that. And then the Praksheshatmika is like, you tell in my ear that you are in the spiritual world or whatever. Tell me something which is not correct, and then I start believing in that, and then I start connecting with that.
so you're
So that
saying
is Praksheshatmika.
Praksheshatmika is thinking that we are these bodies, is
Right, giving us the false identity.
false identity. But
Yeah.
Avaranatmika is
Covering our real identity. So both are needed, right? First is you should first forget your real identity. Okay, so if I forget my real identity, then I will be in the state of, I don't know who I am. So I have no idea. It's like in a vegetative state. I have no clue what am I and what am I doing here. But Praksheshatmika then gives you a false identity. Okay, you are this
I
body.
see, I get it. Okay,
You
so
are
the
a man,
first
you are a
one
woman.
is forgetting who you are.
Right.
And the second one is identifying the wrong identity. Okay.
Exactly. So that is Avaranatmika and Praksheshatmika. This is how Srila Prabhupada describes in a purport in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I forgot which verse he talks about it, but he does talk about it in one of the purports in Srimad Bhagavatam. We can search it in the Veda base. We'll see how Prabhupada very nicely explains it.
So the first one is forgetting I'm a servant of Krishna. Right. Second one is identifying myself as an Indian or an American or whatever, as part of a family or whatever. Right. Okay.
So that is Avaran. Avaran is first forgetting our real identity. So that's what lust does.
Avaran is forgetting you're the servant of Krishna. Right. Second one is thinking you are Indian, American, part of a certain family or something like that.
That's correct. Yeah. False identity.
False identity, yeah. Thank you. I wasn't clear earlier. Now it is clear.
Sure. Any other questions or comments or corrections about what I said? Okay. So let's do the next verse then. So short purport. Okay, I'll just share my screen. So let's recite this verse just once and then I'll read the translation and the purport. Can you repeat after me? Avritam jnanam etena.
Avritam jnanam etena.
Jnanino nityavairina.
Jnanino nityavairina.
Kamarupena kaunteya.
Kamarupena kaunteya.
Dushpurena nanaline cha. Translation. Thus, the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. Purport. It is said in the Manusmriti that lust cannot be satisfied by any amount of sense enjoyment, just as fire is never extinguished by a constant supply of fuel. In the material world, the center of all activities is sex, and thus this material world is called Maithunya Agar, or the shackles of sex life. In the ordinary prison house, criminals are kept within bars. Similarly, the criminals who are disobedient to the laws of the Lord are shackled by sex life. Advancement of material civilization on the basis of sense gratification means increasing the duration of the material existence of a living entity. Therefore, this lust, can everyone go on mute, please? There's some disturbance that is coming. Therefore, this lust is a symbol of ignorance by which the living entity is kept within the material world. While one enjoys sense gratification, it may be that there is some feeling of happiness. But actually, that so-called feeling of happiness is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyer. Read the translation one more time. Thus, the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. So again, Krishna is talking about the covering potency of lust, avaranatmika. Avritam jnanam etena. So what does it cover? It covers our jnana, and that jnana is our real identity. And it is jnanino nitya vairina. It is the eternal enemy of even the jnanis. So what does it mean? Nitya vairina, eternal enemy. A normal enemy, what it would do is, it would just, at the most, it will kill us, and then that's about it. We'll just get rid of that enemy, and that enemy will get rid of us. But lust is such an enemy. It is like a nitya vairina, life after life after life. It keeps us bound in this material world. Prabhupada writes a very powerful purport. He says that this word is like a maithunya agar. Agar is again like a fort. Agar is like a killa. Killa is fort. And maithunya, they are shackled by sex life. Everyone wants to enjoy sex life, and that is the strongest fort of Maya to hold us in this material world. And then dushpurena analena cha, it burns like fire. It is never satisfied. Never. Dushpurena means never to be satisfied. Analena means the fire. It is like a fire. So Prabhupada writes that, he quotes from Manusmriti, and then he says that, the lust, if we constantly keep doing sense enjoyment, it's not that sometime at some point we will get satisfied and we say, okay, no more sense enjoyment now. It's not going to work like that. As long as we will continue to do sense gratification, that desire to do sense gratification will continue to grow stronger and stronger and stronger. It is like that fire which burns. So as more the fuel you add to the fire, the more strongly it burns. So what we have to do is we have to extinguish this fire by not supplying it the fuel. Stop sense gratification first. That is the most important thing. Still the fire will burn for some time until the fuel is gone completely. So the stopping sense enjoyment, following regulative principles, it is like starving the desire for sense gratification. Starving means, the desire will come but will not act on it. Prabhupada writes in a letter very expertly. He says that it is natural for living entities to have thoughts about sense gratification. But he says, and that is not a problem, he says. The biggest problem is that one who acts on such thoughts. So he gives a very expert definition of intelligence. He says intelligence means to cut the desire at the level of thought before it becomes actions. So just when the desire comes, at that very instance you cut it. That is the meaning of intelligence, before it becomes action. So how it works is, it's like a sequence. First we have thought, then we have emotions about it, then we have intention. It gradually becomes stronger and stronger. It starts from thoughts, dhyate vishayan pumsan, then emotion, then intention. It becomes our intention, and then finally it becomes action. Action means we act on it. So Prabhupada writes that actually it is natural for a living entity to have thoughts about sense gratification, but that is not a problem. But the problem is to act on such thoughts. So what happens is, when we act on such thoughts, we are actually adding fuel to the fire, and that fuel, once it is added, that fire will become stronger. And more than that, the problem is our mind becomes rajasic. Rajasic in the sense, everything that we enjoy, that is in the mode of passion. We become passionate and we try to enjoy. So ultimately, the biggest problem is our mind becomes agitated, it becomes passionate, it becomes rajasic. And then to bring it back from there, it's very difficult, extremely difficult. To again bring it back to the mode of goodness, it's very difficult. So therefore, Prabhupada writes in one of the purports of Srimad Bhagavatam that the only way we can control is to cultivate the mode of goodness, and that mode of goodness can be cultivated by following the four regulative principles, and then through chanting the holy names. So if you remember in the previous verse, when the example of mirror covered by dust is given, there Prabhupada also talks about chanting the holy names. So that is like we have that, right? By Cheto Darpana Marjana, by chanting the holy names, the dust from the mirror is cleared. And that is how to get rid of the mode of passion. So slowly and steadily, if we keep chanting, but most important is to first follow the four regulative principles. Don't miss on that, don't fall on that. And then keep chanting the holy names of the Lord. That will help us to come to the mode of goodness and from there rise towards transcendence. So here in this purport, Prabhupada makes a very important statement. He says advancement of material civilization on the basis of sense gratification means increasing the duration of the material existence of a living entity. So very important line that Prabhupada writes here. He says actually advancement of material civilization on the basis of sense gratification. So what has happened today is, what has developed is technology. And we know that technology is the biggest achievement of technology is internet. Through internet, everybody has got connected. And earlier, if someone would have if someone would have wanted to do some kind of sense gratification, the most he could have done is he would have gone to a prostitute and satisfied his senses. But now, the click of one button, the entire degradation of the material world is available to that person. Just by the click of one button, whatever degradation you want, that is available to you just on this same laptop through which I am speaking. And it's a well-known fact that 95% of the internet is used for nefarious purpose. Only 5% is used for constructive purposes. It's a study that is done. It's a very well-known fact that 95% of the internet is used for all rubbish kind of things. You can read those kind of studies that is done. So this is the advancement of material civilization, and that advancement is based on the basis of sense gratification. And what it does is it increases the duration of the material existence of a living entity. That's how Prabhupada describes it, because once our mind becomes degraded, it will take progressively more time for us to come out of it, and rise towards the mode of goodness and subsequently towards the transcendence. Then another thing that he says is, while one enjoys sense gratification, it may be that there is some feeling of happiness, but actually that so-called feeling of happiness is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyer. So why is that that so-called feeling of happiness is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyer? Because that is what keeps us trapped. Actually, there is no happiness, but we think that there is happiness, and then we are always in the pursuit of that happiness. We do get some titillation, some momentary titillation, but it is very minute, very little. And that little minute titillation or happiness, whatever you call it, that keeps us bound. It keeps us going towards that same sense gratification, happiness derived through sense gratification again and again and again. And that keeps us bound with this material world. So that is what Srila Prabhupada is writing. He says that it may be that there is some feeling of happiness, but actually that so-called feeling of happiness is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyer. Radhanath Maharaj, in one of the lecture he mentioned, I remember it. He says that, actually there is no happiness in the material world, but there is enough happiness in the material world to keep us bound in the material world. So what it means is, it's a very little, happiness that is available in the material, but that is enough to keep us bound in the material world. There is also this. So this is like a philosophical what is it called, argument, that sometimes we say that there is no happiness in this material world, but we do say that there is happiness, and that's where the living entity gets bound in this material world. So what exactly is there any happiness or there is no happiness? So that is answered by Prahlad Maharaj in the prayers that he offers to Narsingdev after Narsingdev kills Hiranyakashipu. So I just read this verse. Let me share this here my screen. You all can read it. Very nice verse. This comes in the 7th canto, 9th chapter, 25th verse. Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so let me recite this verse. Kutrashishah shruti sukham ragatrashni rupaha kvedam kalevaram ashesharajam viroha nirvidyate na tujano yad apiti vidwan kamanalam madhulavai samayan durapai. Translation: in this material world, every living entity desires some future happiness, which is exactly like a mirage in the desert. Where is water in the desert? Or in other words, where is happiness in this material world? As for this body, what is its value? It is merely a source of various diseases. The so-called philosophers, scientists, and politicians know this very well, but nonetheless, they aspire for temporary happiness. Happiness is very difficult to obtain, but because they are unable to control their senses, they run after the so-called happiness of the material world and never come to the right conclusion. So he says very clearly that the happiness that which is there in this material world, it is like a mirage, and then there is no actually happiness in this world, but we are constantly hankering towards. So there is a little happiness, and because of that, because they are unable to control their senses, these pundits, he says scientists, politicians, and philosophers, because they are constantly engaged in sense gratification, because they're not able to control their senses, they never come to the right conclusion. So the right conclusion is that we have to rise towards transcendence, where there is eternal happiness, real eternal happiness. So the Acharya explained that this word here, madhu lavai. So madhu means sweetness or happiness. Lavai means very little, just a drop, even less than a drop. So that is the kind of happiness in this material world. But that keeps us bound, keeps us hankering always. If we just get that little madhu lavai taste on our tongue, and then we just keep on hankering for it over and over and over again and again and again. And that keeps us bound, and that doesn't let us come to the right conclusion at all. So I just stop here and see if there are any questions or comments or corrections.
Srila Prabhupada says that even if there is happiness and comfort up until the last day of your life, it still ends, right?
That's true. Yeah.
So a sane person, he says, tries to understand that even if you have perfect happiness, it ends at the time of death of the body,
Yeah.
or so-called perfect happiness.
Even so when Krishna talks about even for the jnanis, it's like a nitya vairina. Jnaninam nitya vairinam. Nitya vairina means it is the eternal enemy of the jnanis. So later in the 14th chapter, when Krishna talks about the 3 modes of material nature, so jnanis are generally considered to be in the mode of goodness. They have knowledge, and they understand the nature of this material world, and then but still lust is like like an enemy for them also. So how do they get trapped with the lust? So there Krishna talks about that their problem is, he says, Sukh sangena badnati, jnana sangena chapara. Sukh sangena. Sukh means they think that I am happy. I know the purpose of life. I know the the real nature of this world. And I have so much knowledge. I have read so many Vedas. I have read so many Upanishads. I have read so many different scriptures, and have so much knowledge. And I am Sukha Sangena Badanati means, so what happens in the mode of passion is we are always hankering for more and more and more. And we are always running, and that just kills us, that just fries us out. That is the characteristic of mode of passion. But in the mode of goodness, they're satisfied. Whatever they have, they're satisfied with that. They have good knowledge, and they're not hankering for these material things, running after them. But that feeling of happiness, that I am satisfied, I have knowledge, and that is what is giving me satisfaction. So Sukha Sangena Badhnati, that bounds them. And Jnana Sangena Chapara. So Jnana, even their knowledge can bind them. So that is very, sometimes we see that there are these impersonalists who follow very rigid brahmacharya, and then they are very, very rigid in following it. And then sometimes it is said that if a person doesn't have knowledge about Krishna, how can he follow brahmacharya? But what happens is, the Maya captures them also. How the Maya captures them is, it is through, they get pride. So pride is also one of the things by which Maya binds. So the pride there is that, I am a very strict brahmachari. I'm not, nobody is able to deviate me from my brahmacharya vrat. So the knowledge of Krishna is not there, but they have so much pride on themselves that I am able to follow this so rigidly, so strictly. And that pride captures them. That pride keeps them bound in the material world. So that is also a problem. So ultimately, Krishna will talk about how do we really get free from this. He talks about three things. He says, Vita, Raga, Bhaya, and Krodha. Raga is attachment, Bhaya is fear, and Krodha is anger. So they are also the products of lust, a very complex product of lust. So attachment is basically, generally comes from lust. We also know that fear is, if we have something which we enjoy so much, losing, the fear of losing, that is the fear. And krodha is basically when actually we lose it, then we become angry. So Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha Manamaya Maupashita Bhava Jnana Tapasa Putamata Bhava Magataha. So Krishna will talk about it later, 4.10, I think that is the verse. So how to get free. So the real formula is in 4.9, and then he talks about that if you follow 4.9, then you can come to 4.10, and those who don't follow 4.10, for them it is 4.11. So I'll just leave it at that without getting into the details. Because we are not there yet. I do not jump. Any other comments, corrections, questions?
We did 4.11 this morning.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember. Yes, Swati.
The leadership question, right? Who are you going to follow?
Yeah, that was a very nice class this morning.
What does Vita mean exactly?
Vita to get free.
Free. Okay.
Vita, Raga, Bhaya, and Krodha. Raga is
Vita
attachment.
is to get, yeah, Raga, Bhaya, Krodha, I knew, but Vita means to get free from those things.
Yeah.
Okay.
4.10 also we did, right, in the morning.
Did we do 10 or 11 today?
Today we did 4.11. Yeah.
11. Okay. Yeah. 10. Yeah. Yesterday.
Let me share my screen. This is 4.10.
I think Yugadharma did yesterday. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Here is that. Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha Manamaya Maupashita Bhava Jnana Tapasa Putamata Bhava Magataha. So Vita here is freed from Raga, Bhaya, and Krodha, which is attachment, fear, and anger. Yeah, today we did 4.11 in the morning. Yeah.
Okay. It's such a nice lecture from Srila Prabhupada on that.
Yeah. Okay. So if there are no other questions or comments, I think we can stop here. So offer our obeisances to all the Vaishnavas assembled. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhyabhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Ganapati Govind Prabhu ki jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for your nice lesson.